All right, here we are. We're up in five. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you every single day. I hope that you know with all of my whole heart how much I appreciate you and the time that you set aside to be with us each and every day. Please meet us on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I need you to like and subscribe there, like and subscribe. And I want you to share the show. We need you to share the show. That helps us with the algorithm. And then please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. That's the only place where I can get friends, everybody. The only place. They keep cutting everybody off on Santita Jackson. So let that go. Don't go there. Go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And I'm on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social, and I am on X at SantitaJ. Phew. Well, what a difference a day or a year or a moment makes. One moment, these are S-hole nations, and then the next they are receiving our deportees. And sometimes they're permanent residents, citizens. We don't know what is going on. But now it's not just El Salvador that will be receiving these deportees. Now, mind you, we're not sending them to France and to England. No, not to Europe. We're sending them to El Salvador. We're proposing sending these deportees to Libya, to Rwanda. How did we get here? And why Libya? Why Rwanda? I want you to reach out to me. Hey, Bernadette, how you doing, sweetie? Like and share, like and share, like and share, everybody. Please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and like and subscribe. And then I need you to like and share. Please like and share. Why Rwanda? Why Libya? Well, Libya is a state that did not collapse. We collapsed it. We really effectively conducted a coup and took out a very popular leader. Make no mistake, Gaddafi was extremely popular with his people. He was beloved by his people, and he was killed by agents who were sponsored by us, the United States. We've always tried to get a hold of their oil, and more than that, even they had one of the top three largest caches of gold in the world. They had virtually eliminated poverty in the nation. When you got married, you got $50,000. If you wanted to get an education any place in the world, they sent you. The state paid for it. The oil wealth was used to make people wealthy. But now they're even auctioning people off on slave blocks. It's just tragic. Rwanda has had all kinds of challenges. There's so much meddling we're doing in Africa. And now we're going to send deportees there. I want to know what your thoughts are. The administration, the Trump administration, weighs sending migrants to Libya and Rwanda. Is that even legal? This is according to CNN. The Trump administration has discussed with Libya and Rwanda the possibility of sending migrants who have criminal records and are in the United States to those two countries, according to multiple sources familiar with this story. The proposals mark a dramatic escalation in the administration's push to deter people journeying to the United States. But there's something else going on here, because the president also said we got to look at some homegrown bad people too. So what does that mean? When we're grabbing people, not just off the streets, but from the lobbies of their apartment buildings. That's what happened to Mahmoud Khalil. He and his wife, who just had their baby. She was heavily pregnant, more than 8 months pregnant, due at any moment. Can you imagine how she felt, how they felt when he was grabbed by people who had not identified themselves, who were masked, and they grabbed him and took him? They didn't even take him downtown in New York. They didn't take him across the river to New Jersey. They took him to Louisiana. It took them a minute to find out where he was. Think about that. We look at other countries and we talk about them disappearing people. Well, it seems that they're doing it here. Well, we've experienced that in the Black community, but now this is something that is, this virus is going to hit everybody. We've got attorney C.K. Hoffler former president of the largest black bar association in the world, the National Bar Association. She's the chair of Rainbow Push. You also see her analyzing legal cases on court TV. And I don't know how she fits it all in. Not only does she have a top law firm, but she has a radio show every Tuesday on WAOK at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Attorney Mark Fancher, author, brilliant social critic, so civil libertarian. I'm so glad to have both of you here today because I need to know what's happening here. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, let me start with you because you have spent a lot of time on the continent, really helping. We had a wave of countries breaking the yoke of colonialism in the 50s and 60s. And then we saw another surge in the late 70s and 80s. And you would go, and into the 90s, and you would go into these countries because, of course, you speak more than one language fluently. You would go into these countries and you would be helping them to establish their charters, their constitutions, their business, and all of that. And so it's not an accident that we are moving so much of our business, I think, onto the continent of Africa. But wow, Rwanda and Libya, what do you make of this? I mean, and the president has said that we're going to look for some homegrown people too. What is that?
Santita, it is a what is that? So what do I make of it? This is really actually tragic. Libya, we won't even go into the history of Libya and the role, the destructive role that the U.S. played. But Libya today is a different country than the Libya that many of us knew from the 90s, 2000, even earlier, during the Gaddafi years. But I will say this: all of this is a business transaction. This is a transaction. So for money, goods, whatever, trade, concessions, we don't know, these countries are going to receive alleged criminals who are being deported from the US, and they could be homegrown, they could be American citizens legitimately, as some have been, or they could be people who are undocumented immigrants. We're not certain. Theoretically, the concept was to deport people who were in gangs and who were engaged in criminal activity. But as we know from the information that we've received from the State Department and other sources, other reliable sources, people who are being deported are people, some of them don't have a criminal history. They may be undocumented, they may not be undocumented. But the discussion that the administration is openly having is how they're going to perhaps use these third party countries to house even US citizens who have been convicted of violent crimes. So as opposed to going to jail somewhere in the US, you would go to jail in El Salvador, Libya, or Rwanda, or whichever other country the US government can broker a deal, a transaction with, to house, to really serve as a private prison, if you will, on foreign territory. This is something that's unprecedented. I don't actually recall even hearing about this. I know that over the past couple of years, Rwanda, this is not new for Rwanda, because over the past couple of years, Rwanda has engaged in being a place for criminals for the UK, for instance. But the deal that they had struck with the UK fell apart for a whole bunch of reasons, legal reasons. The same reason why the deal with the US, if it is to be struck, should also fall apart. There are constitutional issues. There are international issues. There are due process issues. There are a whole host of legal issues associated with this type of deportation and with the housing of all of these individuals. These are people on in a foreign country without the appropriate due process, which we've talked about so many times before, and without the appropriate triggers for the U.S. Constitution. But yet it's happening. It's really the unthinkable, because the next group, and by the way, when we're talking about those Americans who have been convicted of a violent crime, whether rightfully or wrongfully, we're really talking about Black people. Let's just put it squarely where it is. Those people are going to be, by and large, Black and brown, but primarily Black people. So this is really, there aren't really enough words, nice words, in the dictionary that I could use, or that I could summon to describe what this is. But every person who is living in the United States should be very, very concerned about this development. The only thing that could possibly happen to derail it is if the international community rejects this, rejects any money that the U.S. government is giving them, and rejects the pressure that they're feeling, the manipulation that they're feeling by the U.S. government to enter into these deals, even if these deals are lucrative from a financial standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, and whatever other promises we're making. That's the only way I see this unraveling. If it goes to the courts in the U.S., we've seen with this administration is not abiding by court orders, and may not even be respecting the voice of the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is a holy mess, Santita. That's what I make of it.
A holy mess. Mark Fancher, attorney Mark Fancher, what do you make of this? El Salvador, very interesting in the Americas. Um, Rwanda and Libya, though. I mean, you're taking people all the way across the Atlantic. Um, how is that supposed to work? And
I
how are we
And I
justifying?
forgot to mention, Santia, this is reminiscent of this of how a lot of Americans came to this country. A lot
As
of people who
slaves?
were criminals from different European countries, quote unquote criminals,
Mhm,
came to the Americas to colonize, and went to Africa to colonize. So this is
mhm.
reminiscent of the slavery period in history that is not being taught in the US schools anymore.
Well, we need to teach it. I don't want these people who don't even believe it happened to teach it. That's right. There's some things you can just leave to me. That, because our Jewish brothers and sisters do that with Hebrew school. They say, no, 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 my history, I'm not going to let you touch it. We're going to have to do that. America is poorer for not knowing its truth, but truth crushed to the earth will rise. Lie cannot live forever. They can keep on going with this. But I mean, Mark, I'm not going to take your job as our preacher in residence. Help me to understand what, because I'm I'm trying to figure it all out. I said, how do we reverse this slave trade? We're gonna go back across the ocean. It's not funny. It's really not funny, but it is really,
It's
and
in fact very sad.
it's a rueful laugh. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm like, this is absolutely, well, history does have continuity. Talk to me. What do you make of this? I mean, Libya, Rwanda, now we're going on to the African continent. This never would have happened under Gaddafi, Mark Fancher.
Yeah. Um, well, I think you touched on it at the outset when you made reference to the fact that Trump, as an individual at least, regards the countries in Africa as S-hole countries. And what do you put in an S-hole? And that gives you some clue as to what he thinks of these human beings. And so there is a certain logic there, which is also, even from the perspective of the U.S. empire, somewhat self-defeating, because he has failed to recognize Africa's value and the
Mm.
role that it will play in the years and decades to come. And unlike many of the other countries that have influence in the world, whether it's China or Russia or anybody else, these countries are trying to curry favor with Africa. They're trying to establish positive relationships with Africa. Trump continues to think of the African countries as S-hole countries. And so that's where he wants to put his refuse and put what he regards as worthless people. But at the same time, there is a certain logic and consistency to this, rooted in history. Passing reference has also been made to Muammar Gaddafi. He was an amazing figure for many reasons, foremost among them his commitment to trying to unify the African continent into one big superpower that would be able to help African people, both in Africa and globally, to prosper and to rise. He was committed to its self determination and independence. And one of the things that's not talked about Gaddafi very much is the fact that he was committed to racial reconciliation in
Mhm.
Africa. Uh, a large percentage of the population in Libya is Arab,
Mhm.
and there, as here, there has been a historical uh, tension between Arab and Black populations in Africa. Gaddafi was committed to both populations. And
Mhm.
one of the things that he did is he opened his borders to Black workers from surrounding African countries and invited them to come into Libya for purposes of employment and for purposes of residence. That created a border controversy in Libya
Mhm.
because there were very many racist and backwards Arabs within Libya who objected to the fact that Black people were coming across the border. And the hostility towards Black people in Libya was intense enough to extend to Gaddafi himself.
Mhm.
And it created a certain amount of resistance within Libya to Gaddafi and to Black people coming into the country. And there was even an organization, I forget the precise name of it, but it was something to the effect of Coalition to Purge Black People from Libya.
Mhm.
And when the US began to try and to overthrow Gaddafi, they did it by proxy. They gave weapons to these forces, these anti-Black forces, and basically told them, go take care of Gaddafi. They said, we'll do that, but in the process, we're also going to do some other things. And they began, uh, full-scale massacres of Black communities in Libya. And eventually, they got to the point where they caught up with Gaddafi and put a bayonet up his rectum to kill him. But that's
Wait a minute. While he was surrendering, he was under the white flag of surrender. We cannot ever not state that.
that's
He had
exactly
negotiated in what he thought was good faith with Americans. He was
exactly.
going to the place of surrender under the white flag of surrender. When you're under the white flag of surrender in a conflict, you are not to be touched. Right, Mark?
That's correct.
Okay, because what we did to him, and when I say we, it was our government. Just it's awful.
Yeah. So, you know,
And Africans have not forgotten it, by the way.
yeah, and globally.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
in the aftermath of his assassination, those forces took over Libya, and one of the commenters has noted correctly that all kinds of bad things began to happen there, including the trading of Black people as enslaved people, etc., and it total chaos and breakdown. So, if you're looking for a country in Africa where you want to send people, to warehouse people that you don't want, Libya is the perfect place. I mean, it's got the historical background, coming out of a quote unquote border crisis of their own, with backwards elements wanting to shut down the border, and those forces gaining a dominant position within the country, and now working with another country, namely the US, that has its own racist border crisis, so called, that wants to collaborate in taking care of all of these unwanted people. So that makes perfect sense from the perspective of evil backward people. And it likewise with respect to Rwanda, the president there, Paul Kagame,
Mhm.
is the type of guy. He's a Trump kind of guy in terms of being an autocrat and someone who is violent and who has been a negative force in Africa. So this all works out beautifully from the perspective of of Trump type people and people with that mindset. And I think Attorney Hoffler is correct that we have to resist it. And I think that it's really, for us in this country, it becomes difficult for us to do that in Africa. But we certainly have to continue to raise as much fuss and make as much noise as we can about the most fundamental aspect of all of this operation, which is the denial of due process. Because one of the things that can help to turn public opinion is to make clear that many of the people who are getting swept up in this and who are being sent out of the country are people who really should not be sent out. And if people know who they really are, then they become outraged. Even the young man who was wrongfully sent to El Salvador, without due process, and who is, as far as the court is concerned, because no evidence has been presented of his membership in MS-13. This young man's cause is one that has been taken up even in areas of the country that are Trump supporters. There's something fundamentally wrong and unjust about it in the minds of many people, even many people who would tend to support the MAGA cause. So they many of them are committed to trying to get people out of the country. But if they find out, because these people are given due process and they're given an opportunity to come into court or some other forum and to explain who they are and what they have and have not done, if that information comes out and it appears that the US is sending a lot of people who are just basic, hardworking, honest people into that type of hellhole, then that can help to turn the tide of at least public opinion. Whether it will stop a madman like Trump is another question.
Hmm. Do these people, let me start with you, Attorney Fancher, on this. Do American citizens have a right not to be deported overseas because they've committed a crime? What rights do American citizens have? Are they different uh, than the rights that a permanent resident or a green card holder has? Are those rights graduated or are they absolute?
I don't know that I can speak absolutely authoritatively on this, but I think that they're two different legal questions. Okay, for a U.S. citizen, uh, there's the first question, which is, have they committed a crime? And they absolutely have rights to due process with respect to whether they're going to be found criminally liable. They have a right to know the charges that are being lodged against them. They have a right to go to trial and to have a prosecutor prove the elements of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt, have a finding of guilt, and to go through the whole process of determining the appropriate sentence or penalty that results from that. They have all of those rights. Uh, where there is more of a question, at least for me, maybe not with respect to the law objectively, is once it has been determined that they are criminally liable and they are sentenced to a term of incarceration, are there limits on where that sentence can be served? Uh, are they limited to being imprisoned in the United States, or can the government decide that they're going to, for any number of reasons, have them serve their prison term in Guantanamo or something of that kind? And that's the question. And there's this different set of due process looks a little bit different for someone who is facing charges of illegal presence in the country, or is otherwise facing the prospect of deportation because of violation of any limits or regulations that have been placed on their presence in the country.
CK, I mean, you've lived outside of the United States. And when people, at least as we were growing up, all of us, because we come from the same time period.
Oh, you're
Just
37.
you,
You're also
well,
37.
Well, you know what? I'm 29. My mistake.
Oh, oh,
Look, Papa's here. Okay, sorry.
all right.
That's right. So we've heard. Let's put it that way. That's what we're the thriller. We're the thriller generation from Michael Jackson. Not I Want You Back, but I'll just keep that going. But help me to understand. As people look at the United States, I know these students who are being kicked out of the United States. They never expected to have this happen to them. They're like, this might happen in my own homeland, but certainly this kind of thing does not happen in the United States. And now many of them are self-deporting, right? I mean, Attorney Fancher and Attorney Hoffler, they're now saying, oh, you know what? You're not throwing me out, I'm leaving. I'm running out the door. But we have no place to go. I mean, Americans, this is it. And I want to know how are we supposed to process all of this? Because before we can even know what to do, I think trying to process it, because I don't think it's very clear this is not going to stop. This will not stop with people who are not American citizens.
I think you're right.
I mean, we get arrested for walking through a neighborhood where people don't think we belong. We might live there. Thank you, Skip Gates.
Right. And or people can just barge in our house and shoot us. So I think that how do we process it? We have to process this with the same level of care and the same level of tenacity and the same level of diligence that we would process some of the most severe civil rights violations. And in the 50s, and for those who lived and fought during the 50s, in the 60s, for the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act, when they had to protest and silent protest, walk and defy, do what Rosa Parks did, or defy an executive order or defy a court order and sit in a restaurant that, and by the way, here in Georgia and I think other places throughout the country, there have been sightings of whites only signs. So I think just as
Where? Just here, there, everywhere in private property?
everywhere, yeah, private property. Some kids were, I don't want to misspeak, Santita. So
Yeah.
I'll have to pull every day like we all see so much information that's incredible. But my recollection is a group of maybe kids were exposed to, in a public facility, something where they were told they couldn't go in because of the
But CK, stop right there. Because I was talking with a friend of ours
Mhm.
just before I came on the air, and she is, I mean, a sister. She is white, progressive, all of that, and she's been having a tough day. She said, I don't feel well, and wish I could join you.
Mhm.
She said, but I just, because she does this work.
Mhm.
She does this work. Freedom fighter, absolutely. And she said, I'm dealing with the flu. I said, and she said, I'm just trying to figure out where our democracy went. I said, well, my ancestors never saw it. I said, and I was born in a colored women's hospital. So we have to keep fighting because this is not new to America. This is part of who we are.
No,
This
it's
is,
not new. It's not new. You're
I mean,
right.
and I'm just saying, it's deep in the DNA of the country. And, to be an autocrat, to be fascist, all of that, that we have all of that here, all of that.
Mhm.
And so our vigilance is something that is required, Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Fancher, because all this stuff it's looming always. It's just we push back. We've got to continue to push back, CK.
No, I agree. I agree, and I also agree. We have to continue to push back, but we have to take it very seriously because you're saying, what do we do? We have to take it seriously. No one can afford to put their head in the sand. I was in Charlotte yesterday at an event, a lawyer event. It was just astounding. Um, and it was a lawyer event where there were it was a corporate council type of an event. And what really struck me, um, there were two things that struck me. One of the things that struck me was that every speaker who, in private at the reception, I talked to a number of people, and I was there because someone who my family was one of the finalists to receive an award. When I was talking to,
Congratulations.
I know it was really good, but one of the law
Mhm.
firms that sponsored it, one of the firms that actually has stood up to this administration, um, they were speaking one type of rhetoric, but then once we got to the actual event, and the same person had the floor to talk about, they completely avoided that topic, which was amazing to me because this was at a bar event, if you will, where routinely you would have defense lawyers, and I'm not a defense lawyer, but because of what's happening in our legal community, even defense lawyers or people who may have supported the president in the election are saying, wait a minute, we didn't bargain for this. This is not what you said you were going to do certain things, but this was not it. You weren't going to silence lawyers. You weren't going to force lawyers to do things. Lawyers are, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, lawyers fight for people, fight for interests, whether it's corporate interests, whether it's individuals or whatever. You can't tell lawyers what to do and not to do. So there was that was in the air, but yet publicly, no one. I was saying it's just a good thing that I'm not up for an award because I'd win it firstly, and I would take because each of the winners had the ability to speak truth, say whatever they wanted to say. I would have been speaking truth to power because that was the forum where everybody in that room was impacted by what's happening as a lawyer, as an officer of the court. And yet, even the person who got the Lifetime Achievement Award was dancing and all of this dance around the issues. Because when you get a Lifetime Achievement Award, your life work speaks for you. You've been at it probably for 40 or 50 years, maybe even 60 years. And that's the opportunity to say something. But these lawyers who have been deeply impacted said nothing about that, which was very interesting to me. That is how people are being silenced. Mark, I'm sure you see this as well. It's the most amazing thing. Now, I can't say that Black lawyers have been silenced, at least not in my experience. I cannot say that that's the case, except for if they are in big law and maybe they don't have the bandwidth working for big law to express themselves because many of the firms at big law and these huge mega firms have had to felt the need to capitulate and to enter into deals with this administration to provide pro bono services on issues favorable to the administration. They can no longer fight fights that they would fight in the past in their pro bono space. So, we are really in, and when you have people who are, by definition, are there to fight and be advocates on behalf of people who have no voice, who feel compromised and feel that they have to capitulate for survival purposes, Santita. This is survival for many lawyers. That just tells you that people have to take this seriously. Because when you're in trouble and you need someone to stand up and fight for you, if those people are few and far between, and everybody can't take every case, if they're few and far between and the resources that were previously available to you are no longer going to be available, that's when you see and that's when you understand the real impact. Those people who we saw who were lined up like slaves reminded me of the slave ships, how they were in a fetal position, back to back to back to back, sort of in a circle around and around and around. All of those people, they all were entitled to legal counsel. They were all entitled to due process. I would dare say many of them did not have legal counsel or due process. And by the way, if the hands of immigration lawyers, even many of them have been tied, immigration judges, other judges being arrested for doing what's right and abiding by the law, judges being arrested. So we are living in very troubled times, and people need to understand where we are and don't sort of guess and wonder and this and that. It's more about just educating our population, our people, about Black history, about what happened historically. It's about understanding where we are today and understanding the dangers. But as your dad has said over and over, we have been this place before. But they worked hard, so we should never be in that place again. But yet here we are.
And they knew that we would have to keep fighting. And let me address Solomon. You said Santita said Social Security would collapse by now. And she's been saying this since February after listening to one of the teachers. What happened? It's collapsing. It's being collapsed. Maybe you're not 62 looking for that check, but they have fired so many of the people. It's just like 35% of the imports at the Port of Los Angeles are not there. We're not going to see that for 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, we were told. Okay. In the next 2 to 3 months, you're going to see bare shelves. I don't say this, Solomon, because I want it to be so. It's the way it's been structured. Social Security didn't collapse, it's being collapsed. They're ending the Veterans Administration Home Mortgage Rescue Program. So now veterans who were able to go to the VA to get emergency loans to save their homes, they're not going to be able to do that now. That was on the news this morning. The system's not collapsing, it's being collapsed while people are getting wealthier every day. We have people who are on track to become trillionaires, in addition to the Rothschilds and the royal family of England and all of that and all of that. So, and as you say, what are you fighting for? And you keep putting it on the Democrats. Why not fight the sellouts in the Democratic Party? You're being sold out by both parties. They're both corporatists.
Yeah, it's not,
this is not a party thing.
A partisan issue. This is not a partisan issue anymore. It is happening because of an administration that is partisan. But what is happening, the impact on everyone, it's not partisan. It's happening across the board.
CK, I've got a brother in Congress. I've had two. My brother says you've got the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys in the gallery when you're voting, and they're roaming the halls where people are where they're in their offices. You have Republicans who want to vote to save Social Security, who want to vote to save this, that, and the third. Guess what? They don't do it because they're being intimidated. They're frightened to death. Even as they go home to town hall meetings where they're being shouted down by the people who voted for them. This is not a red-blue issue. This is a red, white, and blue, black and blue issue, because everybody's going to get bruised up here. You don't need to shield for the Republican Party because they're not trying to help you, and the Democrats aren't trying to help us either. Nobody is. Nobody will save us for us but us. Reverend Jackson said that, and that's the truth. So you can stop beating that Democrat-Republican drum. Democrats did not get us here. And let me tell you one more thing before I bring you up, Mark Fancher. Make no mistake, Reverend Jesse Jackson did not run for president to bolster the Democratic Party. You had Black Republicans formerly for Jesse Jackson because Black people had no seat at the table. We were just on the menu and we were serving. We did not have any standing in American politics. We hadn't even had the right to vote 30 years. So let's be very, very clear. This is not about Republicans and Democrats. Reagan owned the Republican Party in the 80s, owned it. The only lane we had was in the Democratic Party. I'm from Chicago. The Democratic Party has given Black people nothing but a hard time. Get over the party. It's about the people. And if you don't believe that, you need to have some young people in your life, like my nieces and nephews and my godchildren, who do not look at either of the parties. They're sick of them all.
Yep.
You have children.
Right. This
is young people.
I mean, when I tell you the type of discussions I had to have with college students, they were clear they didn't want to. It was clear for them that they did not want to vote perhaps for Trump. But they were not persuaded that Vice President Harris was the answer, that the Democrats were the answer either. So many of them just either didn't vote or voted for a write-in or voted for, whomever, but they didn't vote for anyone on the Republican ticket or the Democratic ticket.
They are disgusted. They're disgusted, that part. Okay? They're disgusted with it all. Mark Fancher, I just had to say that because I see the conversation going. And here we're trying to talk about, please, you could be walking down the street and you could get snatched up because, do you remember Black Enterprise magazine? Mm-hmm. Butch Graves was walking through Penn Station in New York on his way out to a wealthy suburb, which is where he lived. He's north of 6'4". They were looking for a black man who was 5'10". They arrested him. He is Harvard, Yale, all of that, and looks it. You better get clear. Everybody's vulnerable here. Everybody. And you need to get the Mark's number and CK's number because we're all going to need them. I have them on speed dial. Mark, you better answer that phone. Go on. I mean, talk to me, Mark.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a dialectical person, and we've spent a great deal of time moaning and groaning about how bad things are, and they are. But it's time now to look at what's so good about this, because there is an upside to all of it. If you look historically at how uh, capitalism in particular um, has dealt with populations and how capitalists have managed them, it has been through shrewd manipulation of communities and their method of thinking. And they have been able to effectively manage communities by doing a number of things, by extending privilege to certain groups and not to others. They have created tensions as between groups to cause them to be in contest or to fight one another. They have, when things have gotten really bad in a particular community, been able to use the power of the state to go in and to use police to beat down communities that are getting out of line. They have been able to incarcerate certain communities in great numbers. They have been able to flood certain communities with narcotics in order to keep people disoriented. The idea has always been that you start with an economic system which is fundamentally unjust, one that says that greed is a virtue, one that says that only a small number of people or families or corporations are entitled to have the lion's share of the nation's wealth and to control the means of production, one that says that no matter what, there will always be poor people within the society, no matter what the rhetoric. There will always have to be poor people in a capitalist economy because, by definition, it requires that. One that says that when capitalism within a particular country grows beyond a certain point and it has exhausted its markets within that country and it has exhausted its resources, then it expands and tries to create empire by going into other countries. This is all very corrupt and very evil. And it's all been very carefully managed. And even to the point of politics, we've just been talking about the duopoly, the fact that there are two political parties and both of them are bad. That's a capitalist creation because they know that in order to manage people and to manage their perceptions, it's necessary to create the illusion of democracy and to give people something that looks like an opportunity to make a choice, but which isn't really a choice at all because those with power control both parties. So when you find that those in power, the capitalists, are getting to a point where they are doing all of the things that the Trump administration is doing, striking out and crushing dissent, deporting people in mass without due process, intimidating and terrifying those who are supposed to keep the executive branch in check, whether it's Congress or whether it's the courts. When they are going in and eliminating on a racial basis all information and history about people of color, when they're having large numbers of people fired, when they are doing that, that's a sign of panic. That's a recognition of the fact that they've lost control of the population and they no longer control its thinking. When they recognize, they see just as clearly as Santita, as you and Attorney Hoffler see within your own families, the independent thinking of a younger generation, a generation that is prepared to reject all of the lies that have been told to the previous generations and who are looking for a different way. That's frightening to those in power. They really can't stand that. When for since 1948, they've been able to control the narrative and the story about what Zionism is all about and the role that it plays in Palestine. And they've been able to control that, but now that's out of control too. When they've got kids who are prepared to set up encampments and to speak in favor of the Palestinians, this is something that they've never faced before. And it's very dangerous that people are waking up and understanding what the implications are of all of that. And the only thing that they can do is to try and terrify people and intimidate people and to come down hard on them as a last ditch effort to try and get control of a population whose thinking is out of control. So it's hard. It's frightening. It's disorienting when we see an administration doing all of the things that they're doing. But it's also something that should be we should take as a sign of great victory. The harder they come after us, the more it means that we're winning. And we have to remember that we're not involved in a polite debating contest. We're at war. We don't recognize sometimes that we're at war, but our oppressors certainly do. And in war, things get ugly, things get violent. There are injustices and carnage that comes as a result of war. So when we see these things happening, it's natural, it's to be expected. This is the natural consequence of the conflict that has arisen to the level that it has. And in this moment, we're being tested. We have to make a choice whether we're going to throw up the flag of surrender and just succumb and allow them to have a victory over us that they seek because they think that that's the way they can get it by terrifying us into submission and compliance? Or do we continue to stand up and fight back, knowing that some of us are going to fall, but behind us there are other generations that are standing there ready to fight too? And wave after wave of freedom fighters will continue to come after these people until finally they're overcome. That's where we have to make the decision. And I think Jesus said it best. You can't serve God and mammon or money. And I think that's where a lot of the reluctance comes from. You know, when Attorney Hoffler talks about the people that are unwilling to speak truth to power, they're trying to walk that line. They know that if they speak truth to power, then it's going to affect their security financially and otherwise, or their influence within the legal profession or the community. And we can't have that mindset. We have to be more committed to justice. We have to be more committed to human rights and dignity of people than we are to our own personal well-being. And let the chips fall where they may. We have to say what needs to be said. We need to do what needs to be done. And if as a result of that, we lose a client, we lost him. If as a result of that, we lose a position or a partnership, we lose it. It doesn't, I mean, but we're still functioning, we're still walking around, breathing, and we're still able to fight. And for people who have that mindset, those are truly free people. People who walk around every day worrying about, well, if I say this, then this is going to happen to me. Or if I say that, those are people living in bondage. What kind of a way is that to live? You can live in a great big house and have a big car and sit around fretting and worrying all the time, giving yourself a heart attack, you know, from worry. Or you can just breathe freely and sleep well at night because you know, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've said, you've pleased the good Lord above, and He's got your back. One way or the other, He's going to pull you through. And if the worst happens and they cart you off to Rwanda and you die in prison, you know where you're going to go once you die. So there's nothing to worry about.
Well, okay.
I,
So
I literally,
I'm with you.
just so that you know, I've got 3 minutes, actually 2.5. Go.
I just want to, and so I'll just really in closing, I want to say this. I understand people's trepidation. I really do. I'm focused on what I'm observing in the legal community.
Sure.
Some people view this as a question of survival. And that's what is something in the past Lawyers have been the one to be advocates on behalf of people who found themselves in a position of having their backs up against the wall as a question of survival. And now the people to help you are the ones trying to survive. That's a different dynamic. I understand where they're coming from.
I do too. But look,
I mean, we each have to do what we can. Not everybody can do everything. There are
you're
a
right.
lot of people who are doing things that are very impactful, and a lot of people don't realize they're doing it.
But
So
they have to do something because
a lot of
these
people are doing something.
these. Well, let me just say this, because the people whose backs are against the wall, the person that they've always come to for the past 50 years to get them out of a jam has been Jesse Jackson, the one who's been voted.
Absolutely.
No. I'm just saying, and they did it to Dr. King too. The person who they expected to take the hit and die.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you have to make a sacrifice too.
Right.
It can't just be the people who we honor once they shut their eyes and say, oh, if they were here, oh, please get up and do something now. Because you know what? Because guess what? These firms don't want you. And these people aren't going to give us business. DEI, affirmative action, they have gone, boom, that's it. They're done. We're going to have to figure out something else. And I think, CK, and I'm going to give you the final word in this last minute because I got to run to this next hour. We have got to, the blessing is all of these things that we were holding on to were false. Mm-hmm. They really were. Because the person, Jesus reset time for all time. Yeah. And he died raggedy up on a cross. But oh, he has a crown in glory. And probably ain't walking around with it on his head. He doesn't even care about it.
Well, I can tell you on this very issue, just very quickly, a lot of people are doing a lot of things at their comfort level or in their discomfort, but they don't feel like they can put their families on the line, lose their homes as a result of it. So they're working in a more impactful way and in their space, because some of us can say things other people can't. Some of us can do things in one way and other people can't. It's just always been the case. But the new dynamic, which is something I've never seen in my lifetime, is the silencing and the relegation to servitude of lawyers, people who are the advocates. And yes, people relied on, they knew as long as Reverend Jackson was there, everything was going to be okay. As long as Dr. King and I can,
wait a minute. As long as they would take the hit.
Right.
And then they would walk away with the jelly after we've shaken the tree, gotten struck by the lightning and everything else. And you know what? That day is over.
It's over.
Now
a new group of leaders, Santita, must emerge.
But I'm saying what we're all going to have to do is become those leaders, because we're all being called to account now.
But Santita, they got to be younger. They got to be younger.
I hear you, but
Mark, me, you, we've been in this space for a minute.
I got it.
For a minute. And we're not going to stop being in this space. But what I'm saying is these younger folks, they've got to, because they are the ones that have the energy. Change is brought about.
Oh, no. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying to you, everybody's got skin in the game, because you know what? All the things that we have been fighting for, and these wonderful contracts and things and this and that and the other that we have been able to get, that door has been shut. And there it is. And there it is. Anytime veterans cannot get their mortgages, they are closing that program for all veterans. There's something else going on here, and we need to be clear on that. We got to get clear. And I understand everybody is not going to make the same sacrifices I would say that my parents made, the Dr. King's parents. I get it. But at some point, we're all going to get called on it, because it's the nature of the times. Because it is a different day, everybody. Oh, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Mark Fancher, it's always great to be with people who are so much sharper than me, so that I can steel sharpen steel. And I thank you all for that. We're going to be talking about World Press Freedom Day in the next hour with Jeff Cohen, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Roots Action. Because we've had so many Palestinian journalists killed. We've had so many whistleblowers thrown under the bus in the United States. What about World Press Freedom? Do you really, what kind of narrative are you getting if the press can't tell you the truth? I love you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Mark Fancher. I love you too. And I'm gonna get out of
And
here.
Santita, let's say something about Alexis Herman, because
Okay,
Alexis Herman
quickly.
died and people didn't know about it right away.
Uh-huh.
We can't even.
I mean, the first Black Secretary of HUD, Delta Sigma Theta, love her, shared a birthday with her, all of that. That having been said, that's personal. But she was a real freedom fighter in her space. And we thank God we've been talking about her all week, Attorney Hoffler. No one expected her to make her departure, but she has done that.
Yeah.
But all that means is that she has her crown in heaven. She has done her work. Now
Yeah.
let us do our work.
Yeah.
Let us do our work. The great Alexis Herman. Wow. She's up there with Dr. Lamont Godwin and so many people who have gone on to glory, who've gone on about their business after they've done their work here. May she rest in power and peace. I love you, Alexis Herman. I love you all, everybody. World Press Freedom. How free are members of the media now? Well, we used to have press. And let's talk about how, everybody keeps thinking that Walter Cronkite really turned the tide of the Vietnam War. Jeff Cohen says, no, 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 no. It's not that simple. Let's talk about it here on the Santita Jackson Show. I love you, CK. Love y'all. See you in a minute.